Grace Brown was the daughter of a farmer and a factory worker. She lived in Cortland, New York, and worked at the Gillette skirt factory. And that's where the beautiful Grace met Chester Gillette, who was the nephew of the Gillette skirt factory owner. Now, Chester was a well-known womanizer, but this did not discourage Grace from taking up with him. In 1906, Grace became pregnant, and it being those days where a woman could lose all of her future prospects from such a scandal, she tried to convince Charles to marry her. And Chester, being the horrible person that he was, told Grace that he needed to think about it, and then she was sent away to her family farm. And of course, Chester was using his thinking time to see other women. Shocking. So Grace went back to town and once again tried to convince Chester to marry her. So obviously Chester came from money and was considered a catch. So getting married to a farm girl who worked in his family's factory was not his ideal marital match. But Chester finally relented and told Grace that they would elope together to the Adirondacks. But that was not his true intention. On July 11th, 1906, the couple were at Big Moose Lake. They rented a rowboat and paddled out onto the lake on a beautiful summer morning and never returned. Robert Morrison, who had rented the boat out to the young couple, sent out a search party when they did not return. They eventually found the boat overturned in the water, and then they found Grace Brown's body, and she had been brutally beaten to death. And Chester Gillette, being the prime suspect, was on the run, hiding out in hotels under different names. But it did not take long for authorities to catch up to him, and he was arrested just a few days after Grace's murder. Grace's murder and the subsequent trial that followed afterward became sensationalized. People from all over were coming to witness Chester Gillette's trial. Now, Chester claimed his innocence throughout the trial, trying to convince people that Grace purposefully jumped into the lake, and that when Chester stood up on the boat to try to jump in after her, that the boat capsized. But the evidence clearly showed that Chester hit Grace on the head repeatedly with a tennis racket that he'd brought with him, and then pushed her into the water and let her drown. On December 5th, 1906, the jury found Chester Gillette guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to death. He spent his remaining years in Auburn prison, where he was executed by electric chair on March 30th, 1908. Now, to this day, on the shore of Big Moose Lake, stands a marker where Grace was found, and of course, over time, people have claimed to see the spirit of Grace in this spot. People have become afraid to camp around this area because of all the strange phenomena that happens there. There are even more disturbing accounts of witnesses claiming to see a girl drowning in the lake, only to go out there and find that no one's there. Others have claimed to see Grace wandering around the shore and even entering buildings nearby and extinguishing all the lights within them, as if she just wants to be left alone in the dark with her grief.